it's Yamina. I hope everyone is doing well. In today's video, I wanted to do a compilation of stories, and it's going to be a short video, but a compilation of stories from my college that were in the extremes for me. So it was like, to me, my most funniest experience, my most embarrassing experience, my most uncomfortable experience, and the time that I felt the most misunderstood. So I did college for 4 years. I was a double major in creative writing and psychology. I loved everything about it. And for my story, the first thing I'm going to talk about, and most of these stories took place in my psychology class. I haven't like spoken a whole bunch about them, and they're not like big deals, but I was thinking about them and I was like, oh, I'm going to do a video about that. So the first one, it was a statistics class that was in psychology, based in psychology, and according to google.com, it's called statistical analysis in psychology, and statistical analysis in psychology involves collecting and analyzing data to discover patterns and trends. It is essentially the experimental process that involves involves the study design, sample group, variables, testing, and measurements or research interpretations. Basically, that information is put into psychology, but that's also what we learn in elementary science classes when we did experiments. So yeah, so basically when I ended up taking that class, I felt like I was going into a little bit of like rudimentary math, and it felt like it was going back to the basics of math basically. So I struggled with math in my high school days, but I did pass it. And I actually enjoyed math, even though it was like a really hard class for me. Calculus, algebra, all of them were pretty hard for me, but I actually really enjoyed them. My teachers were very patient with me, so it made it enjoyable. So anyway, doing the statistics class, it felt like a little bit of math was involved with how we had to use the data that we were getting and then like use formulas to get an answer. And to me, the funniest thing that ended up happening, and it happened a few times, I don't know, it probably didn't happen every time, but thankfully in college, in our college classes, we didn't have to raise our hands most of the time to get an answer, to answer in the class. We could just speak out. So we would all be doing our like statistic formulations at the same time, and then the professor would be like, does anyone have an answer? And I would like yell the answer out, and they'd be like, nope, that's not it. Nope, that's not it. So every time I was thinking that I was doing everything perfectly to get the right answer, it turns out I was like always wrong. So that made me laugh because I was so confident that my answer was right and it was not. So that's the funniest thing that happened to me in college. I feel like there's probably other funny things. It's just that I was so overconfident, not in a conceited way, but I was just confident that everything was going well with my computing everything and getting all my stuff done, and I wasn't doing it right. So I still enjoyed that class. I enjoyed all of my psychology classes. The most embarrassing thing, yeah, actually all of these are going to be based in my psychology class. So when I was a teenager up until my 20s, I used to have nightmares. They would happen infrequently, but my nightmares were about the start of Armageddon, and different people believe it's something different. I believe it's God's war with the governments of the earth. So yeah, and not everybody's going to survive it, but people will survive. Anyway, so that's what I believed, but I wasn't associating with any religion at that time. I had been raised by a mom who's a Jehovah's Witness when I was younger, and I didn't get baptized until I was in my 20s. So when I was in college, I was not associating with any religion, and I would have these random nightmares about Armageddon starting, and I would wake up and And I think I remember feeling like just kind of drained and like stressed out in the dream because it felt absolutely real. It felt absolutely real. Like it was just like starting and happening, and I was just like so not ready for it to happen. And then when I woke up from the dream, I would be so relieved because I was like not ready for that to happen. So okay, so the point of this story is because of that feeling from having those, basically to me, they were like nightmares. But because I had those infrequent nightmares, I was sitting in my psychology class one day, one of my psychology classes, and for some reason we had like a few of the windows open, and there was like a crosswind going on. And a crosswind was so strong that it like blew a door or something open and like was making a loud whooshing that noise through the classroom. And I got up from my seat and started screaming while I was holding my head because I was so freaked out because I thought Armageddon was happening. And that was before I like went back to my religion. So yeah, I was stressed out. I haven't had those dreams in a long time. Like every now and then I'll have it, and it's not like a nightmare like it used to be, but it's not it, and I don't have them as frequently, very infrequently, and I never really feel bad in the dream the way I did before. So that was embarrassing to me because I usually am pretty in control of myself, and so I was embarrassed that like people that were acquaintances and friends and colleagues in class were like seeing me overreact to wind running through the classroom, and I was just like, oh, okay, my bad. So yeah, that was embarrassing to me. Okay, the time I felt most misunderstood, this is another psychology class thing. I had a classmate, I'm gonna give her the nickname A. Her name began with an A. So basically the reason why this happened, so like I told you, in college I predominantly preferred to date women, but I was kind of open to dating guys a little bit, but I wasn't really. Um, but anyway, so I was not attracted to everybody. Like me being attracted to somebody was one in a bunch of people. So very rarely, and most of the time I was not attracted to somebody who wasn't already attracted to okay, anyway. So I was never attracted to someone who wasn't already attracted to women is what I'm trying to say. So it very rarely happened that that happened. So the point of that, me saying that, is I was not attracted to this person romantically. So growing up in New York City, most of my friends were black, Puerto Rican, Dominican, people of color. And my college was, I would say, maybe like 60% white. And then like the rest of us were people of color, African American, Caribbean, African, um, Asian, Native American. Yeah, and I think those were the main groups. So our college mostly had white folks, and so me coming from a whole bunch of friends who looked like me, sounded like me, I came into college and I was like, oh, I want to make a white friend is basically what was going on, right? So I met A in class, and I was basically like asking her if she wanted to hang out, and she didn't want to hang out. And I was like trying to psychoanalyze her, be like, is this what's going on? Blah, blah. And she's like, what? Why? And like very stiff in her responses to me. And I realized like, oh, this girl doesn't want to hang out with me. She's being weird. And I made it pretty well known that I dated women at the time, but at the same time I expected people to know that I wasn't interested in them unless I told them I was. So I don't know why. I feel like sometimes my earnestness and wanting to hang out with people is like mistaken for something. But yeah, I felt very misunderstood by that woman, and I'm fine that we didn't become friends because I definitely like natural friendships and not forcing things, but sometimes you got to take the initiative and ask people if they want to hang out. So yeah, she never wanted to hang out. I felt really misunderstood. I felt like she was being really weird. She probably felt like I was being weird, and that's how it ended. So that's that. Okay, the last story is the time that I felt most uncomfortable. I'm gonna actually share two stories. The first one is, and this was not on campus specifically, but this was with one of my best college mates. Um, one of my best college mates. We used to like to go to the club, and one particular night we went to a club, and I just told you I don't drink, so I wasn't even drinking back then. But she likes to drink a little bit. But anyway, we met some guys at the club. I was not interested in any of them, but we brought them back to her house so that we could like play music and hang out still. And one of the there was twin guys, and one of the guys kept trying to kiss me, and he was like he was drunk basically, and I was not interested. I thought it was cute, but I was not interested. Like, thinking someone's cute is not the same as being romantically interested in someone, so I was really annoyed about that. But yeah, he kept trying to kiss me, and I was like, no, like, stop. So yeah, that I was uncomfortable with that. But he was with a bigger guy who had more respect for women's body, personal space, and he was kind of keeping them in check. And I was also not hanging out, being next to that twin, so it ended up working out. But yeah, I was just like, don't try to kiss me, because not interested. So the other time that I felt super uncomfortable is for one of my psychology classes. It was basically about substance abuse, and how that goes into psychology as a study as well. And so for that class, something that my teacher would not let me get out of, no matter how much I tried to ask her about it, and I only asked her once, but yeah, okay. So one of the things I had to do to pass that class is I had to pick, no, I think I had to go to an AA meeting, Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, to actually fulfill one of my points to like pass that particular class. And this teacher, she was actually a recovered alcoholic, so I think it was very important to her, or maybe she wasn't. Ooh, maybe she wasn't. I know we read a story about a lady who was a recovered alcoholic. Anyway, I don't think that was my teacher. I don't think so. Anyway, so forgive me if that's incorrect. We did talk about an actual real life story of a lady who was one. So it was important that we went to this meeting. I was super uncomfortable because, as I've mentioned before, like, I don't drink. I have tasted alcohol before, but I've never been drunk, never been tipsy, never let alcohol become a part of my life. So I was super uncomfortable that I had to go to an AA meeting when I knew I did not have a relationship with alcohol at all. So I was just like, oh boy. So anyway, I went to the meeting. I was super uncomfortable. I felt like an imposter. They all held hands and did this chanting thing. I was super uncomfortable, and I was so happy to get out of there, because like, I felt like an imposter. I felt like I was learning too much about people who were actually dealing with something very heavy and important, and I felt like it was unfair for me to be put in that situation, because I think that teacher should have given me some kind of leeway, some kind of makeup thing to do instead of doing that, because I felt like an imposter. Like, maybe somebody who's actually dealing with that in that class would have benefited more, but I just felt super uncomfortable, and I felt like I was in people's business that I shouldn't have been in. So yeah, that was my other uncomfortable thing. But basically, that's my story, that's my video. So the funniest thing that happened, most embarrassing, misunderstood, and uncomfortable, like, all dealt with psychology class. I did love college. Yeah, and that's the end of this video. I'll talk to y'all later, okay? Bye, take care. Okay, and I don't know what to use. Okay.